Wonderful. So now I think we are actually live, I should hope. And hello, everybody. And thank you for joining us in this also rather new format of the live streams where we'll be doing Zoom calls and taking questions from the room. And we're just trying to set up everything here, but I'm looking forward to this, at least excited about it, and bringing the Archangel of Healing, Raphael, to you. And yes, whatever questions you have are welcome. And if you is there anything? And thank you to Laura, of course, for moderating. And is there anything that you want to clear out technically, or anything before I bring in the Archangel?
No, I think it's good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, then I'm looking forward to it. So see you on the other side, and enjoy. Blessings, love, peace, and healing. I am the Archangel Raphael. I am a companion of humankind. I walk with you through dire straits. I hold a light and part the waters so you can see your way through these narrow passages. And when you are afraid that you might be submerged by the waters of fate, or life is trying you, or you are suffering from ailments that you cannot identify, I intercede and I offer my healing. And so this day, we believe our friend here was talking to another friend who is so kind to moderate this. And they were talking about this arising of anger, of frustration, of triggered emotions, and know that these also have a healing purpose. So often it can be helpful for you to allow yourself to move a little off balance, to then identify where your center is. And this is essentially what is happening to many of you. This is also why the dragon energy is rising in so many of you. It is this attempt to integrate these more basic frustrated emotions with your own higher centers of understanding, of integration, and of love. Therefore, I am most pleased to be able to assist you and help you this day. And I thank everyone who joins into this energetic co creation for what is about to unfold. My blessings to you, and the blessings of heaven, source, and all your angelic partners and guides I bring to you this day. Peace. And yes, so I would simply ask, does anybody want to come forward with a question to pose me, and I will be happy to answer it.
Steve has written one for you, and I'll read it for him. Sorry, one moment.
Yes, there is no time in the angelic realm. We have all the time in the world, dear one.
Steve says, I've been finding that my subconscious has been negatively programmed, and that I seem to be dealing with two different voices, negative ones that my mind generate and ones that I'm not conscious of, but who try to suggest horrible things to me. Can you give me insight onto where these influences come from? I've been trying my best to purify and raise my vibrational and energetic frequency, but the voice continued to be large nuisance. How can I best remove negative influences and reprogram my subconscious to always attune myself to having the perfect life, which I believe is the affirmation, which is the opposite of the intent of the negative forces? Also, what techniques can be suggested to better tune to positive voices and synchronize with my highest and greatest good, my highest self, my oversoul, and the powers of light of the Most High God, such as the watchers who guard the earth during the quarantine prior to 2012. I often call upon Raphael to remove wayward souls and negative entities, and the results have always varied depending on my own beliefs and level of energy and frequency at the time. But many times invoking Raphael has given me some relief, and I'm very grateful. And any tips as the best way to invoke Elohim would be appreciated.
Yes, this is a beautiful, manifold question. First off, notice that our energetic bond, that is the bond between you and I, Steve, is already strong because you have called on my assistance prior to this. And therefore, know that this angelic ray, it is visible and it is tangible in your life. And that is, in a way, a good place to latch onto or turn your attention when you feel that these voices are harrowing you or showing up in unwanted ways in your experience. Well, first off, I would like to remind you that there is essentially very little perfection in this multiverse, that wherever you go, you will find challenges. And from the human vantage point, of course, if you connect to these higher solar energies, they might seem quite perfect and content because they are dealing with problems from a more playful perspective. So they aren't necessarily troubled by this game of duality in the same way, but they still find themselves in juxtapositions where there is something that they need to overcome or integrate or to look at in different ways. That is, it's essentially only when you return to the higher realms of source that pure perfection is reached, and that is the balance of everything that will ever go on and has ever gone on, that is balanced in one perfect moment of loving attention. And so this is a good perspective to have when you are dealing with these sources, because notice that many of them, and here's a paradox again, they derive their power from your rejection of them. So in a sense, if you can offer them to be connected to that ray of light in which you hold your attention, if you can allow me or any other angelic radiance that you may wish to call on, or indeed you can also invoke the Elohim, we will get into that. But if you can allow that to be the part that you are playing sort of as this portal between different disparate energies, then you will notice that these voices, they gain far less power, because it is indeed in their rejection that you perceive them as something unwanted. So rather, it could be helpful when they appear to ask them, well, what are the lessons that you could perhaps positively teach me? Because notice the fact that you are aware of these means that you have already established a sort of boundary, that you are not acting on these impulses, but they are showing up with these unwanted comments or words that they speak into you. And that's, of course, not a pleasant situation, but you can do a type of invocation where you say, I offer you, I have seen you, I allow you to be, and I offer you to use this pathway back to source, to climb this ray of light back to source, where you will be seen, where you will be repurposed, and where you will be melted into the light in the fullest love and understanding. And there you will gain a new purpose. You do not belong here anymore. You are free to go home. Your quest is finished. This is a way to deal with dark entities. And here we are not necessarily just addressing our friend Steve, but we are addressing all people who may feel that they are dealing with these entities showing up in their lives uninvited. So know that there is a balance of negativity, and these things will begin to recede when you feel that well, there are no more lessons for them to teach you in your integration of your higher self. So the more you can offer love, and that is of course a great challenge, to offer love to things that are indeed in their nature unloving, but also notice this is how you demonstrate that you have moved above their influence. It's to stay in that vibration as much as you can, and you are indeed doing quite well also just by putting this forward, seeking help to it, and being conscious of this process. And so you can invoke different angels in this, but this you already know. So to invoke the Elohim, it would be helpful for you to, you can, for instance, create a circle of salt around you. And within this circle, then bring a favorite type of sacred object that you have. For some, it may be a crucifix. For some, it may be a crystal. For some, it may be a holy book. And for some, it may simply be their own bodies. It actually depends on what you hold sacred in this life, what is helpful. But focusing on that object, you can feel an energy growing, and then you say, I allow for the energy of the Elohim to become present. I'll allow for these to grow in my hands. I allow for this energy to spread and multiply within this sacred protected circle. I grow this in my energy field. I carry it with me where I go, and nothing can touch me. And then when you step out of the circle where you have been protected, you will still contain this energy within you. And this, we could say, portal or passageway you have built between your consciousness and the energy of the Elohim, it will then have solidified, and you will feel like the connection is growing. And there, from there, you can explore, and you can try to intuitively sit down and then write out what is it that they're teaching me, and how may I grow their energy. Post that question, and then, well, just stare off into the space for a little while and see what comes to you. And this will be a type of guidance that you can connect to. And then noting that, well, the memory capacity of our friend here is also limited, we will simply ask, did we answer all facets of that question, or were there things that we missed?
That was very good. Thank you very much. I can put these into practice. And that's all.
I am very helpful, and I bring you the deepest love and blessings. And thank you for your beautiful attention in connecting with higher dimensional and angelic energies. You are doing not only yourself, but everyone a great service in this.
I have a question. Thank you for this opportunity. This is Carla. And I have been studying and listening to the Inca Empire and its history. And I was wondering about how when they went up north with to fight, they got in contact with disease before the Spaniards even came down to their empire, when they were trying to reach farther north with their empire. And when the king died up north, and when the people came back to the main capital of the city, many of the people were dead with disease. And in the Pacific Northwest here, our indigenous people were wiped out with smallpox, and all over the indigenous people were wiped out with disease. Why the mass exodus with disease?
Yes, this is a very good question. See, from a spiritual perspective, well, indeed, these are just shifting patterns. That is to say, if you exist beyond time, then the idea that life forms, they succumb to different plagues or pandemics, or as they come in contact with different environments, their biological factors become stressed, and therefore a lot of them may succumb to them. So it's, if you look at this from a completely neutral or material perspective, it's simply, we could say, the codes of novelty that are trying to work themselves into new spaces. And when that happens, there is, of course, the confrontation with new stressors or new factors that may pressure the immune system. You may also have heard of some of the biological circumstances that contribute to this in the Americas. That is in the world of what is sometimes known as the Old World, or the world of Eurasia and Northern Africa. Well, this exists it's a landmass that exists on latitudes rather than longitudes, and this means that diseases can travel far wider without meeting different environmental factors. So simply the fact that, well, a higher degree of immunity was developed earlier on in these areas, also because of the existence of livestock, which brings people into connection with diseases. So when you move up in the latitudes, there is that thing where you come into contact with an entirely different environment because the factors are so different. But these are all sort of material explanations. We could say the spiritual explanation here is also that, well, often power carries this sort of element of disease, and the wielding of power, well, will often actually then result in this idea that, well, the empire, the projection of power outwards, it tries to come to root inwardly. And so you may, for instance, also have heard of the Justinian plague. We believe there was also an Aurelian plague. And this is this idea that when empires become very solidified, they sort of materialize internal stressor that makes that deaths available to them. This also happened during the Peloponnesian War, and it's indeed something that happens. This confrontation with death is a manifestation that then occurs within the society because they have been projecting death outwards as something that they wanted to destroy or hurt others with. And this element of subduing something. And then it can be said about, we know that the smallpox epidemic is quite strong, and notice also that you are experiencing quite a lot of, in these years, quite a lot of fear around disease that is in many ways lodged in the landscape of the Americas. And this is connected indeed to the smallpox epidemic, this idea that approximately 90% of the indigenous population died out from this strange invader that actually preceded in many areas. For instance, in the Northwest, the actual arrival of the conquistadors or other people who subjugated the indigenous peoples. And this can be thought of as a stressor, that at this time power codes were sort of working themselves out. So what you have been working out in the past centuries are in many ways, well, how much power can this planet contain before it begins to blow up itself, and how much power can human beings sort of project onto the material world before it becomes a destructive force that threatens all life. And we could say spiritually, of course, these more indigenous cultures volunteered to undergo that violent traumatic experience of a great plague that wiped out their cultures and civilization. So we hope these are some helpful perspectives on it, but we do know that from the perspective of compassion and the perspective of the individual human being, this is a terrible, terrible tragedy to witness.
Are there any, so the parallels with our our problem today with disease goes back to the remembrance of smallpox?
In many ways, yes. You will notice that this fear, it's lodged in the landscape, and you will notice, for instance, in the polity that you call the United States of America in particular, there is actually this strange and sometimes it could be described as quite irrational fear of the invasion of the foreign body, even though it's likely in many ways the most protected political entity that has ever existed. That is, that it's in no way, shape, or form a threat of being invaded by foreign aggressors. And yet this threat of the enemy within, this threat of someone coming to well, destroy my life, to kill my family, and to take away my livelihood, this is still a force that lives very strongly in this culture. And you see it expressed, for instance, in the subculture of survivalists, so people who build shelters in their backyards and arm themselves and stock up on supplies, and also the fear of the zombie apocalypse. And a lot of this actually traces back to that deep remembrance lost in the energy field of these lands, of the actual invasion and the actual dying out, the actual total destruction that swiped them clean from not so long ago, seen from a historic or spiritual perspective.
Oh, well, that'd be nice to try to understand that. Thank you. That's
Thank
it.
you too. We are happy to shed light on it and know that you, of course, have the support and the healing and the protection of the angels. And we would remind you that everything will be all right. It always is in from the vantage point of spirit and the divine.
Thank you.
My greetings and deepest love to you, Archangel Raphael.
Our love to you too, Laura.
Kevin has graciously said has a question after me, so I do have one for you. Since we're kind of in the waxing of the Lionsgate portal, I'm wondering if you work with the Syrian Blue White Collective and the Unity Field healing that they're bringing through for humanity to work with, or any other.
Yes, indeed, the archangels. Of course, we have very different names, and also notice that, well, we could say before Christian artists got a hold of us and sort of started looking at us in very anthropomorphic ways, we were indeed more approached as very weird beings. That is what you know as the tetramorph, and which turned into the symbols of the evangelists. This was actually the depiction of the angels as you see them in Ezekiel and as you see them in the Lion's Gate of, here we are again, wonderful synchronicity, of Babylon or other ancient Mesopotamian cultures. Well, that is, it's the head of a man and the wings of an eagle, the body of an ox and the hind legs of a lion. Well, these are ways to approach us. So notice that we appear very differently to the Syrians, for instance, and they will translate our energy. But we are indeed working with them because we form a type of bridgeway. So now I am speaking as a voice, and it's most helpful that I come through to you as well, both in a human, through a human vessel, but you also approach me in a benevolent human form. But we do form like these causeways between energies that are situated in the lower dimensions, and then we form this path back to source. And that's why you can use, well, my energetic radiation or exact coordinates of vibration to connect back to the healing powers of source. So yes, I am working with these friends too, or they are working with me, because you could say my energy is available to anyone who wishes to work with it. But yes, they are deeply connected to the healing energies of source.
And with the Unity Field healing, is there particular Go ahead.
Yes, we are not sure we heard the question. We perceived about the idea of the unity field healing, of there was something particular. So we hope we are answering it correctly. Well, indeed, notice that vibration is exactly a thing that's very, very helpful for you to move into. And you could think of source, well, partially as an emanation or a vibration of love, but you could also think of it as a type of pitch tone that contains all tones. And that is, for instance, what has been discovered in the spiritual sciences of the Indian subcontinent, this knowledge that, well, when you begin to massage your spine, bringing forward tones, and indeed your cats know this as well. You call it purring when they do it, but you call it often chanting or or singing hymns when you do it yourself. But it's indeed this idea that, well, the basic frequencies, they all bring you into this unified field of who you are. So the is actually a type of vibrational circle or ladder that you can climb upwards and downwards. And if you are more into visual experiences, then starlight, and indeed the brightest star in your sky is of course the sun. These are ways to grow it. And if you want to bring this into your home, you can place certain crystals in certain configurations. For instance, you can try to light them up with Sirius or the belt of Orion, and there you can then place them outside for the night. And again, you can create a little circle around them if that helps, and they will be charged with star energy. And then you can bring these in as sort of homing beacons for star energy that emanates into your home, and that will create more of a purified vibration in your homes as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it over to Kevin now.
Hello, Raphael, and thanks for coming. This is Kevin.
Greetings, Kevin. Thank you for being here. It is the pleasure of the heavens to interact with you this day.
As you know, I enjoy going on journeys, and just a few days ago, I climbed Wilson Peak within the San Juan Mountains of Western Colorado. While sitting in the saddle of the mountains, I did a small meditation to connect to you and Yeshua. I felt a shift as I started walking down the mountains. Can you comment on this, and could you also give me a general message that would benefit me in this now moment? Thank you.
What a beautiful question. Because notice again, and we hope we are not repeating ourselves when we ask you to, well, really trust your intuition in this. This is in many ways this is the general message, that you would not be called to climbing these peaks and to contacting the exact energies that you were, if this was not something that was in many ways orchestrated from a deep intuitive space within you. And so these connections, they are in many ways not only healing you, but they are also healing your ancestral codes. So there is something within you that is also moving towards a more, let us say, angelic vibration. And there's something that's to you that's moving into this benevolent intercession. And notice that you have also manifested different happenstances of, let us say, well, unfortunate accidents that made you require healing from the outside, and this is actually why you are then connecting to these energetic configurations. It's because you are becoming far stronger in offering healing to people, and you do this in ways that you are not necessarily conscious of. And sometimes you actually do this in ways where you sort of stir very deep patterns within people, and we can reveal, we sense this will also be very meaningful to him, that you have also done this within the channel, that sometimes your friendly open-heartedness had sort of pushed his own sense of lack of belief in the kind-heartedness of other people, and forced him to mobilize some barriers that he had to look at. So notice that you are actually growing into becoming a very strong healer, but you often do so also by challenging other people, and these challenges are not, well, they're not aggressive as such, but they do have a sort of forceful imposition. And this also relates to, well, your calling to work with children and to coach them, where you're actually very good at discerning, like, this is the slight push that they need, that they may feel is uncomfortable, that would bring them into a greater sense of confidence within themselves. So notice that this confidence that you're actually offering to build within people is something that's also growing within you in your spiritual practice. So these connections are very meaningful. And know that it's interesting with the figure of Yeshua, because he sort of, well, what often happens with these people, they're sort of interpreted differently by different ages. So we could also use Superman as an example, as someone who was, well, in the 50s, he was fighting communists, and in the 60s, he was a galactic explorer, and in the 70s, he was a fighter for social justice. And so notice that people are able to project what is necessary in themselves onto these greater figures of illumination, and that's something that you are moving into, actually, this type of forcefulness, because he also had quite a confrontational energy, and that is something that can be used very benevolently when it's guided with love, which it is from in your life and vantage point.
Thank you. That was beautiful.
Thank you. You will have this, the blessings and the support of the heavens in this, so keep following your path and it will not lead you astray.
That was beautiful. There's a couple of questions from the YouTube.
Yes.
Adam asks, "Hi, Archangel Raphael. Can you please tell me what exactly is causing my brother's heart to skip abnormally? What is the root cause and what can cause it to worsen? What should he do to completely remedy it?"
Yes, we sense indeed your brother is quite sensitive. And so, well, there's often this paradox that many of the things that we could say, it's his unwillingness to sort of, he's jolted every time it skips, he's jolted into this fear that it may get worse, and this fear that it may get worse is exactly one of the contributing factors to what exacerbates it. But what he can do to really calm it down is, well, try to reduce his caffeine intake and maybe wean himself off it. But wean himself off it, because if he does what is sometimes known as a cold turkey, he will enter into withdrawal symptoms that will be unpleasant for him. But that would be helpful. Also, he should stay away from television. He should stay away from any type of media that, well, is built on fear codes or is transmitting fearful information. And this is also a type of addiction where he may feel that he will have to work it back. Then he should, well, try to surround himself with animals, and preferably calm animals, such as perhaps large and friendly dogs, or cats that don't scratch him when he gets too near them. Or maybe he would actually like to, well, pet a bunny or have a guinea pig, or we actually sense some of these things will be very helpful to him. So avoiding outside stresses is really what he wants to do, because a lot of what he's picking up on is, well, the very jolty or upset energies of the human collective at present, and also his own sense of not really discerning where it serves him to take in some of these energies and where it doesn't. So the more he can ground, and he can do this by going out into nature, he can also do this by doing passive exercises, for instance, and allowing himself to fold over himself. That is, for instance, a position, we forget the Sanskrit name and it's not important, but simply sitting with his stretched legs and folding passively over them without forcing himself. That will be very helpful. Also, such a thing as the turtle, we believe it might sometimes be called, where, well, he makes this rhomboid or diamond shape with his legs, his feet, they meet, and then he fold over them. And again, he's not to force himself to do anything. And then any type of heavy foods he can eat will be helpful. And especially beans, we sense, is something that will serve him. Also notice, and we do not mean to upset anybody here, but actually it would be helpful for him to ingest things that would provoke flatulence within his system, because this is also a type of clearing out where it's sort of expensing. Well, it works expansively within his system. So he should actually work on farting some more, and we know that it's, you can simply eat the foods that makes this happen, but beans is not a bad way to go in this. So we bless him and know that it will not turn off from one day to the other, but he will notice at one point that it has gotten far less severe is as he begins to follow our advice.
Beautiful. And then Joshen asks, how can humans use your energies and angelic energy in general for healing?
Yes, this is a good question. Well, it's simply to allow it to be. So indeed, you are all angels. You just forget that you are. And so it is not as much a question of using it as allowing it. So there are, of course, several invocations you can do, where you can do the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram to work with angelic energy. So you can simply pray to the angels. So you can move into quiet spaces where you feel angelic presences are more easily accessed by your conscious mind. You can also move into any type of religious structure that you actually find pleasing, because these are indeed all built to put you into. This is the idea of all religious architecture. It's essentially built to put you into that more non-personal, receptive, sacred space. But of course, if it's something that you have bad connections to, as many people may have to their experiences in church, for instance, it's better to seek them out in spaces where you actually feel connected. And this natural spaces are a universally helpful place to go, and then simply call upon them. And there are also techniques such as Reiki, and here it is sometimes also recommended that you focus on a loved one, or one you have dear, fond emotions and memories of. But you can also connect to an angelic radiance in this, and then allow this radiance or energy to build in your hands. And then you simply put your hands wherever you feel healing and love is needed. Or you can also do this to other people that you wish to lend healing, but of course only with their permission. And these are ways that you can connect to the angelic, because we are indeed always present, and we really, really would like to lend you our healing advice and assistance, as you indeed experience us doing in this moment. And therefore, this question is also a blessed one, and we are very happy to be able to offer this guidance.
Thank you. And Shyam is with us on Zoom, and they have written their question, but I don't know if they would like to ask it themselves. If so, you can just unmute and ask Archangel Raphael. Or I'll go ahead and read it unless, oh, there you are.
Yeah, yes, trying to unmute. So my inquiry is mostly on, I could say, healing my relationship with my parents. I due to various reasons, I feel like I need even more time to build myself, understand myself better before finding someone to be with. But here, as per my tradition and culture, it's like actions of disrespect and arrogance. So they feel that each passing day, I'm not respecting them because I don't just settle down with someone they choose for me. So any advice on that will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for also offering our energy in this co-creation, our friend, because notice that this is a very, very difficult conundrum you find yourself in, because we realize and we sense the energetic dissonance that has happened with you actually connecting to your own process and wisdom in this. That is, that even though time is an illusion in the higher realms, it is certainly a factor in the realms where growth is taking place. And that means that you have been aligning with these things. And so you find yourself in a very difficult space, and the choice is of course yours, because there are different options here. Well, you can choose to soothe the concerns of your parents by allowing them to connect you with that spouse, and then knowing that within that space you could actually also grow some loving vibrations, and it might actually not be necessarily detrimental to your own personal development, that then you have this spouse that you connect to and you grow something with, even though that might not be ideal. And this is a way, of course, to get your parents off your back. But we are also aware that you would not feel this need to connect more to yourself, to grow your process and to make your own choices and to seek out your own mate, if you didn't feel like this was something that was a deep conviction within you. And convictions that are deeply held are often also something that arises from your soul. And so here it's important to remember that, well, there is a type of letting go, there's a type of really ignoring that energy that your parents are trying to transmit to you, the energy of disapproval and their need to be respected. Because indeed this is, if you were to step back and then look at it as if these are not exactly your parents, these are simply human beings that you are placed in what we could call the circus of life or time with, then you can energetically discern, well, is this something, is the demand for them to be respected so they can hold on to their construction of a world and how it's supposed to be, that will fade from existence no matter what. Because of course we mean this lovingly, but your parents are doomed to pass from this world, such as all beings are doomed to pass into the realms of the dead, and will in that perspective will have honored their egoic need to latch onto that, to see you will comply with the same exact cultural codes, make the same sacrifices they did. And we could say, we are being sort of harsh here, but it's to make a clear example. Well, to let their bitterness again make the world conform to it. Because if it is a negative energy where they in no way respect your ability to also grow into this, well, maybe there is a type of rejection to be had, and you can have the experience that the more you ignore this, and this is a general advice you can do with negative energies, the more you ignore this, the more these energies will begin to run rampant, and then you will sort of see them for the very impotent forces that they are, that they constantly need others to comply with their narrative, because if they don't, they will actually reveal their own sense of impotence and powerless, because you are in the driver's seat. And what you can do is you can match this, and we know this might provoke some conflict, but you can match this with threatening your parents with not taking a wife at all, becoming a mendicant priest or a walking wise man, or how you want to express it. But this is the threat that you can meet them with. So you won't even do the work to come into yourself and take a wife and establish a life, but they'll never get those grandkids. You'll instead just, align with Shiva and go sit on a mountaintop and meditate and starve yourself and see how they like that. And that might actually be something that will demonstrate to them that they don't have the final say in this. So the choice is yours, but we sense that some of these perspectives may actually have helped you, and know that you are very blessed in your wish to connect more to yourself and stability in this lifetime.
That was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And AJ from YouTube asks if you have a message for her or for them.
Yes, for some reason we may sense that AJ is actually a man, and we do apologize if we are not quite on the money on this. Notice that we do sense you as more energetic fields, and there you contain both energies. But well, we have the message that try to allow yourself to not be stuck. That is, try to work with taking risks in your life. That's actually the place you want to go. There's a, we believe it's the 28th hexagram of the I Ching that's called Dangerously Deep in translations, and that says that any place is better than where you now stand. And there, so try to move to that place and gather resources, and from there you will be able to make a more, take a more assertive action. And this is indeed what we sense, and we also sense that you can begin to consult this oracle, the I Ching, if you want guidance in this process. And it's not to say that you are in a detrimental place at all, but it's simply that greater happiness awaits you if you begin to move in a direction that is calling you. And it doesn't really matter that what direction it is that you might be uncertain about it. It's simply that here you will see that this will lead you to another action and another action and another action. And this is, we, we don't know if this is a very fortunate image. This is the trail of breadcrumbs that then lead you back into the house of pancakes. But there's no witch in this house of pancakes. It's rather, it's the feast that awaits you by connecting to your house, that is your stable reality, or your stable sense of self. So that is indeed the message that we transmit to you, friend, and know you will have the support of the heavens in this, and you are blessed.
And we have another question from Steve Helms. What are the major differences from the crystalline body to a carbon-based body? In this universe, high in density can a carbon-based body achieve? Thank you. Or how high in density can a carbon-based body achieve?
Yes, this is a very meaningful and good question. Well, it can essentially move up to what you know as sixth density, or become focused in seventh dimensional space. And here the crystalline body and the carbon-based body begins to merge. But know that carbon, as you have well discovered by observing how it behaves in your environments, it's able to conduct a lot of light depending on the complexity of the grids that it moves into. And so this is why the seventh dimensional body, or the sixth density body, can be thought of as the diamond body. So this is pure radiance. And beyond that point, carbon doesn't necessarily serve as a very helpful conductor to energies. And that's why it's then more, we can say, easier for consciousness to move into the fluctuations of pure energy, just such as you find it in your starlight, and then to jump on these ley lines of pure energetic radiation throughout the universe. And but until that point, and you have far to go in this, well, carbon becomes more and more complex. It becomes more and more intertwined, and there it allows for a greater, well, if you were to, we are using an image here, but to think of your fiber optics. So this is also the idea of these type of well, very condensed matters that form a perfect unbroken chain, and can therefore conduct energy and information at a very, very high rate. And indeed, carbon has the same properties within the physical framework of the human body. And this is something that you are indeed exploring as you all take in more light. And of course, what then happens is that, well, all the things that are unwanted as you take in this light, and we know our friend here has experiencing quite a lot of fluctuations of temperament and dealing with emotions of anger and being triggered and facing things on the outside that he found was difficult. And that is something that you will all have to, well, we can say this is a bridge that you will all have to cross in your individual ways, that a lot of the things that you may not want to bring into your higher vibrational bodies, they will have to be somehow recognized and integrated before they can also become pure energy that flows within that. So this was a very helpful question, and we bless you for it.
That was wonderful. Thank you. And Salish asks, Greetings, Raphael. Do you have any messages for me? I thank you in advance.
Yes, and we thank you too. So, what might be helpful for you, and this is a helpful there's a helpful connection from the past to this question, because, well, what might be helpful for you is that you begin to connect to your light body. So the more that you can remember to create a space within your days, well, preferably in the evening at least, take 10 minutes where you are surrounded by nothing than natural light. And this may be starlight, or this may be simply pulling your drapes in your home and lighting a candle and then sitting down. But this type of practice where you feel you connect to nothing but light will be it will have a sort of therapeutic effect on you. And here you may feel that you connect to the energy flow of your body. And we also sense that the practice of Nadi Shodhana, or alternate nostril breathing, might serve you in these spaces. And you can simply also work on this when you are going to sleep, or when you find yourself in a stressful situation in the day. And of course, you don't need to block your nasal passage in that way, but just focusing on taking in air with the right and exhaling it with the left, and making the exhale sometimes twice as long as the inhale, because there's a lot of energy moving through you. And so to calm that, it's good to find these spaces. And then of course remember also to alternate nostrils, so take then air in with the left and then exhale it with the right. These are the things that we sense will be really, really helpful to you in stabilizing your energy. And we also bless you in this process. And all of you, we offer our love and healing. If it is not being stated constantly, we certainly hope you feel it in this transmission of energy.
Thank you so much. And Steve from the Zoom has another question.
Yes.
I often use the traditional symbols and colors for connecting to the archangels of the horizontal and vertical planes. What are the ways you can recommend about connecting to the archangels, and what should we consider is the archangel's role in the ascension process, if that is one of the things we want to call on them for?
Yes, it's a beautiful question. See, our role is essentially the one that we have always played in human affairs, and that is that we bring you into connection with the uppermost or highermost parts of you, the parts of you that have no fear. And so that is also our message. It is to fear not. But often what happens, of course, is that when we intercede, well, this was actually provoke quite a lot of the things that are unwanted in you to be seen. So we have less so I than, for instance, the Archangel Michael, but we have different roles to play where we bring up things within you that no longer serve you. So we sort of act as guides and mirrors in this. And the most helpful way to connect to us is actually, as you are also doing, for instance, with colors, it's to find your own intuitive sense of this. So for some, it can be, well, finding certain frequency bands of music that brings you into a deeper healing state. For some, it can be to try to connect to the loving energies of your heart and then see what speaks to you. And for some, it can simply be the passage of prayer. But often, a very helpful thing is to, again, surround yourself by natural light sources. So in spaces where there is less light pollution, as we would say, and it's not necessarily pollution, but these are types of energy that exist in a frequency band that it's where it's harder for human consciousness, once it, for instance, finds itself in deep city lights, to meet the archangels. There are different angels that you can then connect to through this. So fear not. But the most classic of the archangels, it is essentially to find that place, and you can also use it by invoking the different elements. So if you were to look up what elements that, well, different angelic forces would be connected with, and then to evoke that element for those of you who feel very connected to the Earth Mother and the elemental forces, and for those of you who may feel more astrally inclined or like you don't really belong on this planet, then you can do the reverse where you connect to the archangels and then connect to this layer of dimensionality, indeed, such as you are doing with the angels of the horizontal and the vertical plane. This is a beautiful question, and you are very blessed in these connections. They will grow as you begin to examine them.
I believe Shamael is going to ask another question.
Yes.
Yes, more like a request. I've applied for a very big job. Haven't gotten a call for interview yet, but more a request of blessings
Yes.
from the Archangel for it to go well, and I learn what I need to. Thank you.
Yes. May you connect to your inner guidance in this. May you have faith that your intuition does not steer you clear. May your connection to your heart be growing in this, and may you know that whatever you are confronted with in the outside world that may appear as difficulties, it is an offering of the angelic and the divine forces for you to grow into this calling that indeed has been fluttering in your heart. Wherever you go, you find yourself carried by divine forces, and a divine wind indeed reaches your feet as you step upon the ground. You do not touch it, but you touch this angelic energy that carries you forward. Our deepest blessings in this, our love to you, our unwavering and undying support in whatever endeavor you feel called to carry out. Blessings.
Thank you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Hello, Raphael. This is Kevin again.
Blessings, Kevin.
So I'd like some insights into our 7-year-old son, Oscar, who he's been tricky as of like the last 6 months. He's just kind of growing into being very argumentative and defiant. And I get it. He has his own will and his own likes, and there's times to be defiant, but I just feel that he's going into this stage right now where it's become more than it needs to be. And in the past, I've spoken to Mas with a different entity that he brought through, that he mentioned that Oscar just had, these emotions that were running through him that he really couldn't identify with, and that was, the sort of the way he manifested it. And I just feel that there's another layer now that he's a bit older and that he's a bit more aware. I mean, he still might have emotions running through him that he doesn't understand, and this is kind of how he projects. But I think in this now moment, just, as a father, I just want to raise him with the most loving hand. But at times recently, I've found myself just being a bit more firm with him. And that's really kind of not my cup of tea, but I understand that it needs to happen at times. So I guess with all that being said, I'll let you respond. Thank you.
Yes, thank you to you, and we bring your blessings, of course, to you and the entire family, but indeed also to sweet 7-year-old Oscar, who may be finding his fierce side. Well, partially there is an element here where he is, because he is a child, he's picking up on some of these very volatile energies that exist globally right now. And so many of you feel that there is a type of fury running through the collective. And of course, it's in many ways, when you're a 7-year-old boy, it can be even more difficult to separate yourself from, well, what what emotions do I need to step back from, and what emotions am I carrying out? But also notice that in many ways in the question, the answer is contained, because what he is doing is essentially that he's testing your boundaries. And so whenever you go, well, this is a bit much now, he's being a bit much, and it's a little more that I would actually prefer, or I think things should be allowed for. Well, this is exactly the thing that's triggering him, because he's surrounded by people who are in many ways quite grounded, or who all attempt to also seek a common ground and to make things work. And so he's the youngest, and he's trying to find his place, and know also that often the youngest have this instinct to try to kick over the can, or to simply to see how much pressure can this thing take before it breaks apart. And we know this is most instrumental to the vessel we are coming through, who's also the youngest, and have this instinct of constantly trying to push people's buttons to see, okay, what will this stir, and how much can this situation handle, because he's been born into a framework, and he doesn't really understand that this framework actually relies on some very delicate factors of people being patient with him, and people, well, actually contributing a lot to the situation. So what he's doing is that he's pushing it to see where do I go to find the limitations within this. So you being firm with him is exactly what he's actually seeking. And of course it's not pleasant to you, but of course also all of your children are both brought in as blessings and lessons in your life. And this is indeed in many ways also the lesson that you're learning. That you're actually, sometimes by being very assertive, it actually serves someone else, and it actually serves him, even though he maybe react very adversely to it and get very angry at first. But know that this assertiveness will also serve you in other arenas, so you will also get more comfortable with just laying down the line, so to speak, to let him know that, well, here's a definite boundary, and you don't cross this, because then it's, well, hell to pay sounds so dramatic, but then a situation will arise which is unpleasant for you as well as for the rest of us. And this is his way of trying to find his own feet and identity in the family. But we do know that it really tests your patience, and know that you are both very blessed in this kind of frustration manifestation of an upbringing in the particular.
Thank you. That was very helpful. And then one small little follow-up would be that I don't like to raise my children on, reward and punishment. I like to raise them on principles of good, holistic, happy living. So I don't want to be like, all right, like you cross this boundary and you don't get your TV time, or you don't get your ice cream after dinner. I just want him to learn from a principle level of like, this is not the way to act. So if you could just kind of comment on not using punishment and reward for actions or lack thereof.
It's a very helpful perspective that you're bringing forward, and it does reveal a certain degree of maturity, because humans are indeed not machines, and what they respond to is actually more energetic frequencies. So but what you actually can do is that you can, and we know this is also perhaps pushing your boundaries a little, but it is to show him that he doesn't, well, maybe he gets his ice cream, but he doesn't necessarily get the affection. That is, it's actually also the way that, well, even though it's said to love your children unconditionally, well, love often also takes a kind of harsh manifestation. So it's good that you don't necessarily isolate him or deprive him of anything, but it's also good that you show that well, necessarily the immediate affection or validation or appreciation of you will not be available when you are acting out. There you will actually might find that people are a little cold. So he also has to know that there is a type of compromise in establishing a pleasant situation, because what he's testing now is simply like, how how much negative energy can I let out without it affecting this situation? And he won't really stop, he won't begin to try to regulate his emotions in that way unless he experiences that, well, now you are being disapproved of. And I actually, and you are welcome, that of course it needs to be organic for you, but you are welcome to not berate him, but to tell him that now he's being a little asshole and nobody really likes him when he's like that, because that's also making it very explicit to him that, well, this is a way of being that other people simply cannot stand being around, and that will begin to awaken him into that space.
Thanks so much.
You too, our friend. Blessings to both Oscar and you and the rest of the family.
It has been so wonderful. Thank you, Archangel Raphael. We have another question from YouTube. Phylogenics asks, the deepest transformation seems to happen in solitude. Wandering sages littered the pages of history, speaking with angels before departing these shores. Have we seen the end of human relationships, in quotes?
Yes, this is a very good question, because indeed you are touching on something that's very complex here, because it actually it requires, we could say, a lot of sacrifice for many of you, but what you have been experiencing in past centuries, and notice of course that with a helpful observation that every age has the story. Well, every age defends its own idiosyncrasies and lacks by pointing to a stylized image of the previous age as someone that was far worse. So now you look at the industrial age and you say, well, look at how terrible that was. And in the industrial age, they pointed to well, yes, they pointed to mercantilism and then said, like, look at how look at how unadvanced they were in their understanding of things. So that's indeed the idea that, well, your age doesn't necessarily recognize the richness of human texture, that individuals are different. And there have been times, for instance, well, just 800 years ago or 1400 years ago, 3000 years ago, where it was far more acknowledged that people were really different in the way that they were born. And so the sages and these individual human beings, they play a quite important role. And to those, relationships may have a quite different definition. So the problem for so many of you who are spiritually inclined, and this goes for the friend we are addressing, and this goes for many present and the vessel that we are coming through, is simply that you still feel you sort of need to comply with a lot of these, well, both instincts that are ingrained in you biologically, but that you have also been socially configured to realize. And so notice it's what's, for instance, happening in what is called the, we hope we get all the letters here, LBTQ movement. There might be a letter missing, but you get the point. It's simply the idea that people are discovering that difference is actually something that is inherent in human beings and that needs to be allowed for. And you are playing out all kinds of funny experiments to try to establish these differences. Because indeed, in a lot of cultures, there have been, well, certain seers or certain oddballs or certain people who didn't fit into the template of relationships, but then actually served the human collective by being outside this. And that is, for instance, something that as culture and civilization has become more orderly and more organized, that has been suppressed. And notice in so many cultures, well, the fact that people are left-handed, for instance, and we are coming through a left-handed individual, is something that was not tolerated, that was demonized, and needed to be whipped out of people. And indeed, well, notice that there is this type of, the percentage of the Levites, let us say, or the percentage of left-handed, or the percentage of homosexuals, well, that are actually people who, well, are we mean this very positively, deviant from the mainstream configuration of people, how they usually are. And once these people, they sort of accept their deviancy, their differentness, they gain access to a great type of allowance that they can actually borrow a lot of wonders into other people's existence. And so, yes, the problem is indeed not being isolated, or that these relationships that some people cultivate, they are more, well, in the imaginary realms, or in the spiritual realms, or in the artistic realms, or in other types of, let us say, more isolate human exploration. But it's the problem that they still feel that the loneliness is something, that the inability to comply with how people are in general, that's troubling them. And as soon as you go into this radical type of self-acceptance, where you accept that, okay, I'm kind of a weirdo. So again, freak power, proud to be different, but also happy to be a part of the human collective, and to be, well, a little weird like everybody else. Then you actually begin to move past this type of configuration, because indeed many people are moving beyond relationships to different types of explorations, having really felt that there was not much that rewarded them in these explorations. And other people are moving into very tight relationships and finding that, well, they are people who are very good at cultivating social realities and social bonds, and this is important for them. So we hope this gets to nuance the question, and to make you also feel more comfortable with wherever you are, whoever you are listening to this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I have another question. Again, if you could share with us the energies that are coming through with the Lionsgate portal this year, and maybe assist us, for those who wish to align with those energies.
Oh, yes. And we actually forget, but know that there will be another type of these interactions on the Lionsgate, we believe, it being
Oh,
7 days from
beautiful.
now. So, and
Okay.
I will not be the entity coming through, but we believe that the Arcturian bodies, they will help you a great deal on this day. But notice again that what you are connecting to, it's your fierceness. So you can sense these type of bright fire-breathing dragons coming into your experience now. And these are in many ways, well, angelic dragons. These are entities, the powerful entities that connect you to the human sense of power. And so as a preliminary to this, a lot of you are experiencing these forceful, more aggressive impulses. And these were, for instance, the impulses that were running through our little friend Oscar. And they will be more balanced out as this Lionsgate, this type of balancing point, both in the year and in the solar cycle. It moves into configuration. So at that point, you will sense that it begins to align and feed more into a directed sense of action, which will look different for every one of you, but will be, well, less overwhelming and more helpful and constructive. That is how we sense the energies progressing in this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And then there is another question from the YouTube. Badolfi asks, greetings, Raphael. How is it possible to overcome the horrific pain and anxiety I've been fighting? And I think they meant it all started after my teacher left when we were reading The Fall of the King.
Oh, this is very interesting. It's also because The Fall of the King is one of the very, if they're speaking about the book by Danish author and Nobel Prize winner Johann Jensen, it's one of the very favorite books of of this being, and I believe it may have been when he actually left them, and this might be an entity that's there. Well, the horrific pain and grief, know that it's essentially that you are latching on to these things. So everyone is walking their own paths, and everyone is connected, are connected. So these bonds are never severed. And if you really feel that these bonds are meaningful, then they are undying. So you are connected to everyone that you have had even a shorter, brief interaction with. But sometimes you connect to people on a deep soul level. And this is something that's sometimes very hurtful because you sense that you become severed in the physical. But being severed in the physical, speaking again of this isolation, it's always a teaching opportunity. It's always something that really allows you to move into a space where you can look at this hurt. And when you begin to relinquish the attachment to this hurt and pain, you will see that these are indeed just energies that you can work with. And notice again how these, for instance, fear and pain is something that's very dominant in that novel. It's something that's trying to clear itself out by actually being spoken of, by being turned into a type of artwork, a type of apprehension that others can move through. And it's interesting how you all experience this when other people share their pain or grievances. Then you will notice that seems very comforting, and not out of Schadenfreude, not because it's so nice for me to see that you don't feel well, because the reason is that, well, you find that there's a deep recognition here that you are all together in the cycle of time, and that is very helpful. And of course, if you feel that a type of abandonment here, it might be meaningful for you to connect to this teacher again and then feel that, okay, well, this person is still around and is actually still available for guidance. If that is something that I need to receive in my life, then it will be that offered to me at the right time, at the right point. And that is good. So notice when fear and pain grows too incremental, it's helpful for you to also learn to reach out. And that's something that you are learning to do. And when you do this, you will be very, very surprised at how the people will meet you with love. And we will use, for instance, well, we will just use this person as an example because he's also very heralded by a lot of senses of not belonging in this world. And sometimes it really makes him act out aggressively or lash out against people, or to make slightly angry YouTube or spiteful YouTube videos. And often what happens is actually that the people then reflect a great degree of understanding and compassion back to him. And he's always surprised by that. So just know that you are all growing and that these feelings, they too shall pass, but to act on them is to act on them by allowing yourself to be vulnerable and share is also always very, very helpful.
So beautiful. Thank you. And gosh, Liliana asks, hi, Archangel Raphael. Do you have any messages for me? Thank you.
Oh, yes. Yes, and our message is to take it easy because you are going through a transitional phase. So we are giving you some quite practical advice, and that is simply to, well, sometimes when you feel emotion overwhelm you, then have a piece of paper where you can write them down. And sometimes it might also be helpful for you to, well, either go a place where you can scream or to scream into a pillow or something to let out some of these quite forceful stirrings that are within you. And maybe also acquire some sense of colors you can use to paint things. And it might be just, moving a red crayon up and down a block of paper, but that indeed will also help you. So whatever you can do to acknowledge that, well, your emotions, they don't necessarily need to turn into verbalized thoughts. They can be a type of different expression. And these types of different expressions, they actually serve you greatly. And this might be something that you will give you a great deal of clarity in those places where you feel a little triggered or provoked in your daily life. So also have patience with your new situation because it's teaching you things. And one of the things it's teaching you is indeed patience. So partially let it out and don't be afraid to scream when you need to. And on the other side, be patient, because this too shall pass and you are learning something from it. Our blessings to you in this.
Much gratitude. And Jennifer Cabral asks, Dear Raphael, I am struggling to support my physical body. How can I access your energy with my being so I can stabilize routine and discipline for my well-being?
Yes, we sense in many ways the most helpful thing you can do is to submerge your feet in water. And it would be helpful for you to go swimming, but we sense in lieu of this, you can simply, well, take any kind of small tub you have and then fill it with water and infuse put a bit of salt in this, and it can just be kitchen salt. It's not that important. And then say a few prayers around it. And it might be anything you want, but you can say, Dear Archangel Raphael, I invite you to bless this water, to allow your healing powers to enter it and allow these healing powers to fuse with my body. And then you sit around with your feet in water for 10-15 minutes. And in that time, it can also be helpful if you clear your space. So that means that don't necessarily become too distracted and don't have your cell phone nearby. But you can, well, if you're flipping through something that makes you happy, or something that's pleasant to you to observe, this is something that might help you greatly. And that is something that we recommend. This is a technique. And then also any type of vibrational healing you can bring forward. So high tonal frequencies, to allow yourself to sing and to chant and to feel. And this might bring up the release of crying, but crying is a very, very helpful discipline. So becoming lachrymose, we believe it is to be tearful, is actually in many ways to also be joyful, because it's a connection to the deep part of you that acknowledges the value of being alive, and then heals you by letting this out. So these are some of the techniques we will suggest to you. And we, of course, offer you our healing blessings in this.
Oh, much gratitude and love to you. And there's many greetings, love, and appreciation at being expressed on YouTube for all of your wisdom and guidance.
Wonderful. We are happy to offer it straight from the heavens to you, sweet human beings.
One more question from the YouTube. Mr. Jim asks, hello, I enjoy going to theme parks, but after a few rides, I get headaches and motion sickness unlike others. So I wonder, how can I help this so I can keep riding?
We just think this is such it's also our friend here who's laughing a little, but the heavens are laughing with him, because we think it's such a sweet question that this childlike wonder of letting life really take you for a ride and enjoying it. And so this is also a type of, we will just, before we give personal advice, use this as general advice, that indeed life is taking all of you for a ride, and it has its ups and downs, and it provokes you in a lot of ways. But then what happens is, metaphorically, that you get these headaches and migraines, and you feel a little nauseous from it, and the more you release into this, the better. So you would actually benefit a lot from doing, you can find your preferred methods, and we know it's you can use the method of yin yoga or passive stretching. You can also just, if you prefer, lie around stretching your body in different ways. You can also remember to submerge yourself in hot water, perhaps on a weekly basis, so you can go for a massage. Or all these techniques would actually help you, because what's provoking this is that indeed the human body often exists in a base tension level. And for some of you, this tension level it exists on such a high baseline that when you get provoked a little by outside circumstances, even if these are joyful, you tense up and you find it unpleasant. And so, well, you could also, this is not necessarily the most angelic advice, and it's not to develop a practice of eating muscle relaxants, but this will indeed be something that would help you prevent this if you did this before you went into this place. And then it's your own sense of discernment whether or not we could say, well, the hangover or the ramifications of ingesting pharmaceuticals is worth the joy and the pleasure and the connection to yourself you get from going to the theme park. And of course, these other techniques are perhaps more helpful. But the more you can de-stress and desensitize yourself, and also if you take, well, longer spaces between the rides. So notice again that often what prudent parents do around Christmas morning or around a birthday when they have small children is that they parcel out the gifts, so they don't give them all at once. And that's the same advice you can do to yourself. So allow yourself to sort of ground from the elation before you go on the next ride. That will help a little, because what happens to that child is they become overworked and overwhelmed, and then they actually often revert to, well, in the children's case, it's a state of crying, because it's of course, what am I going to do now that I'm so overwhelmed? But for adults who are, well, far more, let us say, suppressed in their emotional reactions, they just tense up, and then they get a headache or a migraine and these things. So really be kind to yourself and try to relax yourself, and this will help, because we sense that since you really enjoy going to theme parks, it's worth it that you keep exploring this pleasure.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And Carla has one more question. You may need
You want me to go ahead and say it? You can
Yes,
go
there
ahead and
you
read
go.
it.
Oh, go ahead, hon.
Okay. I was wondering, with the extreme events on Earth right now, with the heat waves, the flooding, and all this devastation you see on TV, if it has anything to do with the polarity shift going on Earth right now.
Yes, they do have something to do with polarity shifts. So this is the idea that, well, the reaction of the sun and your Earth's relationship to the sun, and indeed also you receiving more energy from the galactic center, they are all working the magnetic fields, and this is something that's affecting it. But it's also it's greatly exacerbated by different human factors. So we could say the Earth has always been flooding, but the problem, the idea was just that there weren't at that time tens of millions of people centered in these population centers. So it was far easier for people to relocate to different areas. They also had far fewer possessions, which made it far more difficult for them to translocate. So what you are, in a sense, teaching yourself, as this polarity shifts also affects your inner realities, is the need to live in ways where you are not as attached to the geographical spaces, but you are indeed more attached to that holistic state you uphold within you. And these polarity shifts and the ecological crises and these dramatic happenings, they will intensify in the next 20 years or so. So in that sense, it's helpful to be prepared that your physical spaces may have to be relocated or reordered, and maybe, well, some of your heirlooms, if you have a big chest from the 1600s or something, that might not make it into these new ways of living. But if you have treasured doily that your great grandmother knitted, or something, then that might be the thing to latch onto as a family heirloom instead. And we are of course speaking in many ways symbolically here, but it is to say that, well, the energetic shifts, all these processes are connected, and it's because you are teaching yourselves to live in a way where you are both being kind to yourself and your planet, and you are being, well, far more nimble in your ability to adjust to the shifting circumstances that you are being offered.
Does that have something to do with the rampant amount of homelessness we're seeing now?
Yes, it does. It's indeed, know that this also has to do with, well, we could say the polarity being reflected within human societies. And, well, the idea is that if you don't, as you know, for instance, from your tectonics, that if the plate movement, it doesn't, using the term degauss here, or it doesn't de-stress from slight movements of the tectonic plates, then a great deal of tension will build up, and this will be very cataclysmic. And so what this problem of homelessness is illustrating is that there is a lot of energies that have been built up, not necessarily in the people who are homeless, but in the people who are latching on to their homes. And this is, of course, again, metaphorically, but to say that those with most possessions are latching on to possessions that are not necessarily, that don't serve any purpose other than them feeling special and good about themselves. And when this tectonic social pressure doesn't alleviate itself, it does become explosive. So there's a great shifting going on, and indeed many who are homeless are then teaching themselves to live in ways that are more sustainable, and we could say off-grid, and that are very minimalistic. And this may seem like a hard mode of survival, but this is also very much an interpretation seen from, well, the point of view of those who perhaps have 5 homes and feel that these 5 homes are all important to them, and to have a car and perhaps a helicopter and several cars and all these things are possessions. So a lot of this will be shifted from the hands that are holding on to things. And at the same time, consider, we were speaking to you earlier of the indigenous populations, that these were in some sense all people who were homeless. That is, they were nomadic peoples who were only able to own what they could carry from site to site and campground to campground. And that is indeed a way where several different ways of living is being explored in order to find the more sustainable one. But you are correct in observing that this is seen from an energetic perspective, it holds such a high degree of tension that it will result in a type of tectonic eruption.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are complete. We just want to express our deepest love and gratitude. You are so beloved to us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is very wonderful because we sense the individual holding our energy for this moment is also becoming a little frazzled by it. So again, notice that we are in wonderful timing and there have been no rapid tectonic shifts or great tensions here. And instead, you have all contributed with your love and ability to examine and move forward and accept these new vibrations within you. And therefore, the greatest loving and blessings from heaven. And I will transmit a tonal book invocation, and then I will leave you with a blessing. As your third eyes awaken in every one of you. You begin to see the beautiful shimmering light shining through individuals, surfaces submerge, and essences appear. You are moving into higher energetic reality, and in this, all these communications, all this guidance from the heavens, it will be available to you as you reach out and touch it. Work on your vibrations, or let your vibrations work you, and realize that this is a symphony being played in which you are both the conductor and the band and the melody. You are a perfect, whole, unified field of light, love, hope, healing, and this radiance, it shows even when you forget it. Therefore, know that I have witnessed the beauty in all of you present here, and I thank you greatly for this interactions. Many blessings from I, the Archangel Raphael, and from all of the heavens, reaching you with their guiding light, peace, and love. Hello. I truly enjoyed that, dear people. I thought that was wonderful, and I'm so happy we could do it this way, because I really thought that that grew some energies in a very cool and helpful way. And also thank you for excellent moderation, Laura. And I hope and sense that I may also call on you another time, and I know there's also friends of the show who are willing, and if any of you feel called to work as moderators, I hope we can sort of do a communal rotation, so no one gets to be in the in the pressure chamber for all the sessions. But I truly enjoyed it, and I'm thinking about and your requests. If there are any entities that you really want to communicate with, then you're welcome to let me know. And I think that could be exciting. But I'm thinking to connect to our Arcturian bodies next Sunday, 8/8 Lionsgate, for anyone who wants to join us. That could be lovely, I think.
That'd be wonderful.
Wonderful. So. Okay, so I will just yes, gather my strength and thank you all for the love we shared here, and for being here, and of course for your prior yes, to anyone who wants to donate, then thank you, but also thank you for your prior and previous donations. It has meant a lot to me, and that's of course also why I feel it's so lovely that, well, we can gather here, and people who have sort of appreciated the practice, or felt like, I'll send that guy a couple of bucks so he can keep doing this. That has been much appreciated. So both for the material and the immaterial love we have shared. Thank you so much, guys, and see you next Sunday, hopefully.
Bye.
Bye.